Welcome back to the Fundraising Beyond Borders podcast. Today on the show, we have Haley Cooper, CEO and founder at the Savvy Fundraiser. Haley, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Morgan. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, we were just chatting a little bit before. We have some shared experiences, both living in Africa. I currently am outside of my office in Victoria Falls, or I should say the town is called Livingston, but Victoria Falls, Zambia. We're saying Haley's been to the area, which is always fun to chat through it. But just to introduce Haley a little bit, Haley is the founder of the Savvy Fundraiser, a nonprofit consulting and coaching business, host of the Lead with Heart podcast, and certified trainer in MC leadership. She is the author of Sow, Grow, Lead. She is an expert in fundraising, leadership, and board development. She is also a founding board member and past board chair of the Orange County Nonprofit Professionals Network and has served on the boards of Association of Fundraising Professionals, OC Chapter, and Impact Giving. When she is not wearing her professional hat, she is a mom of 3 kiddos under 5, 2 boys and a girl, and you can find her cooking, baking, dancing, or adventuring. What a fun intro. So thank you again for being here. And I know that you have just launched a new book, or it's just been published. So I can't wait to hear more about that as well.
Yeah, I always love what other people read my bio. I'm like, oh yeah.
That's me. That's me. It's always so fun, isn't it? Okay, Haley, tell us, where are you actually tuning in from right now, though?
I am in Orange County, California.
Awesome. Cool. And so Orange County, and then we, I was just sharing a little bit of similarities when it comes to moving to Africa, and Haley has originally took that journey to Malawi. So Haley, kind of tell us about the start of it all. How have you really started your journey in fundraising and development and moving to Malawi? Give us the good details.
Yeah, so I wrote about this in the intro of my book. I grew up in a very philanthropic family locally here in Orange County. My grandparents are very, very philanthropic. My parents have carried on that legacy, and I grew up going to this organization. It was called the St. Joseph Ballet. Now it's the Wooden Floor. They had events, and I would go to their events with my grandparents. I would go to serve at soup kitchens on Thanksgiving, and it was just part of what we did, but I didn't understand what a nonprofit was. Like, I didn't understand that's what was like operating these events, right? Or that they were going to raise funds. And I also went to a private school that, I didn't realize there was an advancement team. Like, I thought, oh, well, we pay a tuition. Like, that's just how they operate, right? And then, later on, I was getting like asked for money once I was out of college. But yeah. And so I graduated college in 2011, fast forward to with a degree in kinesiology. And I was sitting a few weeks after I graduated, I was sitting in my parents' church, and on the stage, someone was saying they were going to Malawi that summer and they were leading a missions trip. And in order to go, you also had to sponsor a child from World Vision. And then you would go to get to meet that child. And so I looked at my parents, and again, very philanthropic locally, but never really a global reach other than like vacation. And I looked at my dad and I was like, guess where I'm going this summer? And he's like, what the heck? Like, who are you? Like, where did this come from? I was like, no, I'm going. It was just like put on my heart in that moment. And I had to say yes. So I raised enough money to go on that missions trip. And that was in August of 2011. And, coming from my Orange County bubble, I went to school in Northern California, but hadn't really been out of the country. Just really opened my eyes. And I feel like I think whenever you go on a missions trip, it like sets that fire in you, or you travel somewhere and you're like, I have to do something. And then a few weeks afterwards, I got like into the groove of just living my normal, comfortable life back here. And I still had this like itch in the back of my mind that I was meant to do something. And I was applying to become a registered dietitian. And got kind of rejected. After rejection, and about 8 months after that trip, the person who was leading that trip called me into his office. He was a lawyer at the time, called me into his office and said, Haley, do you want to go make peanut butter in Malawi for a year? And I was like, what? Like, where did this come from? And why me? Like, you had led all of these missions trips. Like, why are you calling me into your office? And when the original tip that we went with an organization called Why Malawi. And they were trying to end all malaria deaths for children under 5 by spraying in the villages and also offering tents for beds. And they found that children were still passing away because of malnutrition. And so one of the original founders had heard about this ready-to-use therapeutic product on 60 Minutes with Anderson Cooper. And it was founded by this organization called Project Peanut Butter. And so he asked me if I wanted to, start a nonprofit. And that's when I was like quick into, okay, what's a 501c3? What are articles of incorporations? What the heck is a board of directors? And I started, luckily we were able to contract with the original founder with the intent that if we ever sold the product, they get a royalty. But they gave us a recipe and I was living at home at the time and I was literally started making it. That was like March 2012. Out of KitchenAid mixers, like just trying out different testing in my parents' kitchen. And we bought KitchenAid mix and fast forward to August 2012 when we're trying to set up all the logistics because it is US based with the Malawi operation, like the 501c3 is in the US here in Orange County. But we were trying to like figure out all the logistics we needed to go to Malawi. And in August 2012, I stepped on a plane with my KitchenAid mixers and landed in Malawi.
Wow, what a story. And okay, so you land in Malawi and what was going through your mind? Like what are those next steps? You're learning all about, nonprofit world. But what kind of led you to those next steps of taking it to, because I know there's a big journey that you had with this organization. So tell us about those next steps.
So it was definitely like a, what the heck did I just get myself into moment? Like I got there and we were promised a factory. The factory is located in Nkoma, Malawi, which is about, I want to say 50 kilometers. I don't know what that is in miles. I just know kilometers, like an hour from Lilongwe, which is the capital. It's a very rural town. But there's actually a really prominent hospital there that actually a lot of interns go. The hospital in the capital sends people. They have some specific operations and surgeons that you can't find anywhere else in Malawi. And so we established our peanut butter factory there. I lived in a flat. There's also an expat community around, so there were a lot of houses. There was a hostel. I lived in a flat with 3 other German girls. We didn't have water, very rare electricity, no internet. And at the time, there was like no social media. That's how old I am. It was like right in the time of Instagram or whatever. But yeah, it was just kind of this, and we were promised a factory, but there was no factory. And so in 2 weeks, we had to get the designs ready for a factory to be built so that we could start producing product, because when people found that we were going to be there, they started showing up at our doorstep and we didn't have anything to provide. And we also had farmers showing up at our doorstep with peanuts, and there was lack of quality control there, which I'll get into deeper. But our first thing, really, besides building the factory, we actually traveled to the south of Malawi to Blantyre to see the Project Peanut Butter operation. And I mean, this was a well-oiled machine. So when I'm like here, like I'm sitting in this meeting with these people who had this well-established thing, I'm like, who am I to do this? Like, why am I here? Should I just hop on a plane, like cop out? Like, I don't know why this has like fallen on my lap. But I think also it was like an empowering moment where I'm like, I'm 24 and I get to be in these meetings. I get to be in these situations, and I have the resourcefulness in me and the ability to learn and do it, and like the passion to make it happen, that, okay, maybe I do deserve to be here. And so after that, we kind of understood, like, we worked from KitchenAid mixers at the beginning. We also were putting them into bottles but we realized there wasn't as much quality control there because even though you seal it, there could be bacteria that gets into it. So we, after seeing their operation, we're like, okay, this is the trajectory that we need to aim for. And these are the steps that we need to take to get there. And also, I mentioned the peanuts, because how it works in Malawi is they'll fill it with rocks or they'll wash their peanuts to make it weigh more so that it's more profitable. And peanuts are a high cash crop aside from tobacco in Malawi. And so if you wash your peanuts, they can get aflatoxin. And that's a carcinogen that can cause a lot of damage for kids and, I mean, any individual. And we were like, well, these are kids that are already sick. Like, we don't want to have to, we want that quality control to be able to provide good product to them. So we actually started a farming co-op with someone in Lilongwe who would buy peanuts from the local farmers, and then he would roast and blanch them for us. And then when we would pick them up on a weekly basis, and we would then send our product out to London every week to get our tests to make sure that we were up to standard.
So, Haley, at 24, I bet you absolutely did not expect to be an expert in peanuts and also this whole new journey of nonprofit life and living in a whole new country. Tell us a little bit about what that was like, just learning all these new things at once.
Yeah, it was definitely overwhelming. And there were I would just get to the end of the day and I would be exhausted because it wasn't just about, obviously I had to learn about how to make a peanut butter factory effective with limited internet. So I did a lot of research, did a lot of networking with other individuals in the community. And I had to learn how to do the quality control, which sure, I had worked in a restaurant, so I had the food safety handlers certificate, but never to the quality that we needed our product. I also had to network with UNICEF and local government entities, and there were a lot of cultural nuances. Before we even met with the government, we had to go to the head chief in the village who kind of oversaw all of Nkoma. And we couldn't start without getting her seal of approval, not just for the peanut butter factory, but also it's PB&J, so Peanut Butter and Jesus. So to be able to evangelize in her community as well and set up some Bible teaching for the chief. So I mean, just going to see her was daunting. We had to bring goats. We had to be chickens, which is a cultural norm. When you're going to visit someone, you bring a gift. And we had to bring a certain amount. I don't remember what the amount was to be able to even have her show up. We waited in her lobby she had a really nice house with a windy staircase. It was about 20 minutes from the hospital. And I just remember waiting in her, and I was just these meetings of oh my goodness, I get to be in these rooms, but it definitely is overwhelming, not just to understand government and how the bureaucracy works, but also the cultural context in which that is operating as well. And, coming in with my own Western context of how things go, and having this idea and then realizing, oh, someone could be 2 hours late for a meeting and that's totally normal, or they don't show up and it's okay, well, we'll meet tomorrow, same time. And I'm okay, cool. Just those things of the urgency that we have in the Western world where things have to happen, and how I was raised, right? If you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And it was that does not happen in Malawi. And so I had to reshift my whole belief system and how I operated, because I had to immerse myself in the culture and understand where they were coming from, listen to their needs, listen to how they operate, and then work together to co-create this vision within the community.
Yeah, it's something that I've had to learn right away is Africa time, right? So it's a very different time to, like what you're saying, the fast-paced life in America. Okay, you were starting this nonprofit, and I think it's so important, for especially international nonprofits to take into, the cultural contexts, and it's going to be different. But tell us a little bit about your journey then with finding donors. So, who were your supporters? Were they Americans? Were they international donors? Tell us a little bit about that, and then how, because as you're talking about your experiences with the chief and just the communities. Oftentimes, international donors or supporters haven't been to Malawi or really seen this firsthand. So, how were you able to also clearly communicate that to supporters and donors?
Yeah, so I think if you think about like any startup nonprofit, it is a very small donor base. There were 5 co-founders, and so they kind of fronted a lot of the fundraising at the beginning just to get the operational start. But after, a year or two, there was some donor fatigue, and they wanted to see other people get involved. I should also say the goal of our factory was also to be a social enterprise and sell our product internationally to UNICEF. So there was that earned income aspect of it. So it wasn't just going to be solely fundraising. But we just had, when I would travel back to the US, or our our other founders lived in the US and maybe would travel every quarter, they would bring some of their network to Malawi to see the operation. Obviously, that's not logistical for everyone because it's like a $4,000 trip, and it's a long flight. I mean, you've done it multiple times. It's like a 2-day flight, and there's only 3 flights that go in and out of Malawi. And so, yeah, it was, one, bringing people there, but also finding a way to bring this story to the US that was ethical and showed people what was really happening, because it can be hard to explain when I tell people about my experience in Malawi and what I experienced. Like, there is a lot of joy that exists, and there's that coexistence of joy, and I think it's hard to translate that when people think about, I think of the term where we all grew up with the Sarah McLachlan, like, sad dogs. And, I was at a hotel the other day and I still saw that. And I was like, this still exists? Like, you're still trying to like guilt me in with these sad puppy faces to give. And that's just not the reality of what is happening on the ground. And so I think it was really hard. It was hard and a learning thing for me, to identify donors. I think one of the things that I did when I moved back after 2.5 years of living there was join AFP OC, which then, like you mentioned in my bio, I ended up on the board, and I did their mentorship program. So if you're a member here, I think it's across the board, but you can do your mentorship program. And I had this wonderful mentor, Alan Schooley, and he taught me all about annual fundraising and how to establish a fundraising plan and how to establish monthly donors. And we also, our product, we found people were traveling like 20 kilometers, 50 kilometers just to get the product. And that was like giving up a day of getting water, of cooking, of cleaning, of taking care of their family. So we decided to go out to healthcares and we started healthcare sponsorship. So you could sponsor a healthcare unit in the community, and for X amount of money, this is what would happen on a monthly basis, and this is the report that you would get. So based on and I still use some of what he taught me to today, on major gifts and individual giving. Yeah, he really taught me how to identify and go out in the community. So we went to churches, local community groups. I Out of those 5, how we started getting donors, asking them to do house parties. And like I said before, it was like hard to bring it to some people to understand the context and avoid what I said earlier, like that identity of poverty porn, which, can sensationalize that poverty and, evoke pity from donors, which I don't think you ever want to do. And it just strips the people of their dignity, framing them as helpless victims rather than active participants in their own progress. And it encourages that savior mindset, right? Like, we're going to come in and save the day, when that's really just not the truth of how you should operate, because communities have resources, resilience, and agency. So we had to really focus on showing and highlighting the strengths and the cultural richness and the problem-solving abilities of the people that were in the community, because this really was a community effort, and focus on that collaboration and partnership that we had with the hospital, that we had with other entities in the community, so that we could, again, co-create that vision of positive change rather than, having donors be those heroic benefactors swooping in. It was really about, this community said yes, they want to make change for their children. They're helping us do that by X amount of things that they were doing. And so how can we just bring in that funding to be able to amplify that?
I think that's so important, and it makes me so happy that it's happening more and more. This shift, of big, buzzword, if you want to label it, community-centric fundraising, and this shift of narrative, and how we kind of moving away from this, the donor being the hero, but making sure that these community voices are at the forefront and they're being heard. And I really try to do this with my clients, and it's hard. And I think they get frustrated sometimes because so many, especially I call out Americans just because of my American background, it's so many Americans aren't yet educated on this topic. But we're starting to slowly, I don't know if you're saying this too, Haley, we're starting to slowly see this shift. It makes me so excited that there is a shift in narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I even see that locally here in the work that I do, getting more of that consent-based storytelling, right? And having the voice come from the person and having them have agency in telling their story.
Yes, it's so important. And so tell me, like, were there any big aha moments when you were working with this organization as a fundraiser where it really kind of shaped you as a consultant now, and your approach or how you fundraise with other nonprofits?
Yeah, so I read about this in the book, and I didn't really understand this concept and like had a name for it until recently when someone was on my podcast talking about it, but it made sense, and it applied to what I was doing and what I see a lot of nonprofits do, and what we were doing is this concept of firefighting versus fireproofing. And so that was kind of my big aha moment. And I see this a lot in nonprofits where we feel resource stricken. We feel like we don't have like the capacity to be proactive. So we're just fighting fires. We're just, something comes up and it's like, okay, we got to address that. We got to address that. Like, and there's no foresight or proactiveness. And so that's what we were doing. Like, I found myself just, taking things and getting overwhelmed and fighting fires instead of really setting up that sustainability for our organization. And, I was scrambling to solve problems as they flared up, and that sapped our team's energy. And in contrast, what fireproofing is about designing strategies, systems, and relationships in advance so that when challenges emerge, you already have laid the groundwork for a swift, effective, and values-aligned response. So this informed everything from, securing those supply chains of all the things that go into the peanut butter product, which wasn't just peanuts. There were micronutrients, milk powder, sugar. So we had to coordinate all of that. And there were shortages of supplies, and going through political changes in Malawi at the time with a new president. So things weren't getting imported or exported as frequently. And then also, that, like we said before, the timing thing, like the communication channels with local stakeholders and government entities, like how to set up strategies where we know this isn't going to move as fast as we want it to, but how can we start to continue to move the needle along or move it along? And understand, again, those potential logistical bottlenecks and cultivate those relationships with farmers and community leaders who could help, get us in or help navigate those inevitable hurdles. And so that really helped us kind of be successful and move along and have those conversations with UNICEF and the government to be able to come see our factory to get it approved, because we had put those processes in place where we knew inevitably we were going to hit a hurdle. And we had like plan A, plan B, plan C on how we were going to approach those. And so I think, when it comes to, if you're listening to this, we had kind of talked about this before, but like, start listening deeply to the communities you serve, understand their cultural context, their aspirations, and the systems they rely upon, and structure your fundraising story so it focuses on resilience, capacity building, and local leadership. And on the operational side, put early energy into building strong local partnerships, clarifying government regulations, and investing in training and infrastructure that minimizes that last-minute scrambling.
I think that's so, so key. There is so many golden nuggets in that. And I'm thinking about so many clients, especially some that I'm working with right now, international nonprofits. So they're based, a lot of their fundraising is done in America, but they're abroad. Like I have one in Tanzania right now. And it's also making sure you're putting that in your budget. So as we're going into 2025, we have a line item to train your staff or whoever, your volunteers, your board members in America on those cultural differences, and making sure that everybody, comes together and understanding different cultural contexts, because I think that's, oftentimes where issues can arise, just because we're from different sides of the world, and there's going to be those differences, which is the beauty of it, right? It's beautiful, but just having to understand that and know that and is so important in the leadership of your organization.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, this has been amazing, Haley. Just as we're wrapping up, is there really like any big key activity or first step an organization or nonprofit should take if they're like, okay, this sounds like me. I really need to get my structures into place. I need to, really think about the different cultures within my organization, everything that you've been sharing. Is there like a first key step that a nonprofit should take in order to be proactive in this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, like I mentioned before, I think raising funds internationally is twofold. So I think first, immerse yourself in your community's perspectives before you even think about asking donors for support, because this ensures that your messaging isn't, like we talked about before, just filtered solely through a Western lens, but rather informs the people, but is informed by the people who will carry that project forward. Like I said, we had all of Malawians running the factory. They were the one carrying the project forward, and it was from their perspective and their needs and wants for their community. And it wasn't just us coming in, sharing it from our lens of what needed to be done. And then I think, again, highlight those stories and strategies of resilience, capacity, and mutual learning, because the donors have it from a perspective that donors are partnering with strong, capable leaders on the ground and not just plugging a need, because then they're more likely to invest in long-term impact.
Love that. And it's all about that long-term impact, isn't it? It's not just a quick fix, but it's all about that long-term sustainable impact. And donors, want to see that and be a part of that. And oftentimes, when you start to dream big and share those big goals with your donors, they want to be a part of that vision. So I think those are all beautiful next steps. So Haley, thank you so much for just sharing your journey. And I mean, it's just been incredible to hear all about, your time in Malawi and now being back in the States and having your own company and supporting nonprofits and teaching them what you got to learn in Malawi. It's just amazing to hear. So thank you for being here. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been so fun. You can find me on LinkedIn, Haley Cooper CFRE. If this is a video, I am in a pink jacket on LinkedIn. You can find me at thesavvyfundraiser.com. And also my book, So Grow Lead, is live on Amazon.
Yes, and congratulations about your book. Tell us just so we can hear a little bit more, because I did want you to take the opportunity to share it. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Yeah, so this concept, we're in December 2024. This started in April 2024. I had a few people be like, Haley, you should write your story. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So it is about my time in Malawi, building the peanut butter factory, but it also offers practical strategies for nonprofit leaders. So it's both a blend of my story, also a nonprofit book. So yeah, it was fun to write. And it's funny because when I launched it, only my editor had read it. But I've been getting good feedback. So at least there's that. So yeah, it was kind of fun. And also it was like, I was able to relive some of the memories and like put myself in those situations, like remember the smells and the like textures and the sights. And so it was really fun for me to just go back and relive some of those experiences. And also, if you're feeling a little down about yourself, write a book, because then you're like, oh yes, I am capable of doing hard things.
I mean, I have thought about it many times, writing a book, and it's like, even just to start, I feel like that's probably the hardest part, isn't it? It's like just thinking of the concept and just starting. So it's incredible that, I mean, and the fact that you just put this all together in less than a year is truly remarkable. So I know you can find, is it correct? You can find the new book is out on Amazon.
That's correct. Yes.
So I'll make sure to put it in our show notes. But Haley, thank you so much for being here. It's been so fun.
Thank you so much.